How's it going?
Hey, that was easy.
Yeah, right.
Remember the old days when we just all typed numbers into a little box and it worked every time?
I know, right? That's what Alexis actually just said was why don't you guys just call each other?
Shit, I don't. What the hell the deal is? I apologize. I didn't get any invitation, and even in Hangouts where I was logged in as Tom at subledger.com, I got no notifications.
Yeah, that same thing happened to me.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, Tom, we figured it out. Plus, we had a little bit of audio codec issue on Philip's side. You know how it seems like Chrome has its hooks deep into the audio because, like, when it crashes, it's like it takes out the audio on the whole freaking machine. Philip had to reboot to actually get it to work even.
I just did a quick Chrome and restart.
Oh, that's all you did? Never mind.
Got it.
So doubles and decimals and floats.
Oh,
Oh,
the types. Yeah, no, I was only saying with sometimes in scientific stuff where the approximate's an approximate. The float's not really that harmful.
yeah. Well, I wasn't. What I wasn't suggesting is that there was absolutely, no possible need for floats in financial calculations. If you're doing like aggregate data and aggregating a bunch of values together and figuring out averages or whatever statistics you need to generate, that's fine. But at the end of the day, once anything that is actually transacted just must be stored in
Uh,
a fixed decimal format.
yeah, numeric type. Yeah,
Yeah.
the provider gives it with a fixed decimal place, but then they label it in a lot of their data. Some stuff that should be decimal types, label it float. So I think it will just be, you know, on the loader, kind of manually overriding some of the columns. Uh, as we start to load it in more and use it.
I don't understand.
Basically, they gave us a schema.
Ooh.
So, and there's a fair amount of tables. So, you could kind of load their default in, which then for some things you're going to get doubles, or you could be like, okay, I'm going to adapt some of these columns in their schema, and it's a seven decimal place column in their data. So it's a little bit like more, not as, I don't say automated, but in a sense adjusted, a little bit more work, but it's one of those things where you prioritize.
Right. Well, here's the thing. I mean, if the data that's coming in is in floats to begin with, then there's no reason not to store it as floats.
Well, it's in a
Uh,
string in a fixed decimal place, but then they're providing a schema that says it's in floats for some of it. For other stuff, it's definitely as a float. So
right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't recommend like I don't think I would recommend overriding the types that they recommend, but at at some point you're going to have to come up with a price for something, and that price for something needs to be represented, as a fixed decimal type,
Mhm.
like for sure. Like it just absolutely has to have an exact value that, isn't that you can add and subtract from and not get weird rounding errors, right?
Exactly.
And that's it. Like again, it's not that there's no need for floats anywhere in the system. They can be very efficient and operate very quickly, and they're more than. It's not really a matter of accuracy; it's a matter of exactness.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, which kind of sounds like the same thing, but isn't really the same thing, right? So,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, exactness and reproducibility, and no really strange. Nobody wants to see that they spent $1.000135 on something.
I know there's a couple of receipts that people have posted online with UO 0.99999.
Right. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, we see it all the time. A lot of customers come to Subledger and they start flowing in their old data because they want their whole history in, and shit doesn't add up. And it's like, why isn't it adding up? It's like, well, are any floats involved? It's like, well, yeah, of course we use floats. And I'm like, well, there you go. They're like, floats are awesome. I'm like, well, kind of. Depends. Like, it depends on what you want out of them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you want them to add up, they suck. You know, so. And it's amazing how many people don't know that. Like sophisticated developers sometimes they're just like, what? Like floats work perfectly. It's like, well, not like you really think they do.
Yeah, there's definitely issues, but and then you multiply it back, and then it looks normal again, right? So
Yeah, I mean they're super useful, like when used properly, but they should not, for the most part, be used in financial stuff, and particularly at the input and output stages. Like just
yeah.
horribly, horribly dangerous. So there you go. That's all I have to say on
How was
this.
your birthday, by the way?
It was great. Elizabeth pointed out that we've got. I never recognized that I shared a birthday with the Super Bowl. Is there, 50 signs all over San Francisco, and it was my 50th birthday. So
It's true, yeah. The game out in Santa Clara this year, right? You still call it the 49ers or the San Francisco, or did they change that?
no, I think they are the Santa Clara 49ers, aren't they? No, they're still San Francisco, I guess.
Wait a minute, Santa Clara? What the hell? What are you talking about?
They're playing out of a stadium down there, and it's 46 miles from San Francisco.
So yeah, the mayor of San Francisco said we're not going to fund your stadium, and they said okay, we'll move to Silicon Valley, and that's how it went. So.
Yep. Yeah, I say fuck them. Like,
well, that's what I say. And then my aunt and uncle had season tickets from way back, and they tried to charge like $25,000 a personal seat license per ticket to keep the tickets. And they're moving to Santa Clara, so you're not really going to want to drive an hour and a half each time you want to go to a football game. So they kind of were like, well, here's the tickets.
Goodbye. Yeah. So how are things shaping up at Sensible?
Good. We have starting a marketing initiative. Finishing off the compliance stuff on more of the marketing content. Got a pitch book that's looking pretty good now.
Nice.
So can start to go out and sell it, which is good. Both on sort of the customer acquisition side as well as on the next round of investment acquisition side.
Right.
Then then it's kind of incrementally getting everything else we need to get done at each stage to keep the thing going, right? So.
Yeah, I know that feeling. It seems like progress has been pretty good. It seems like all the people I talk to that are on the project are really quite bright. So, it seems like you're in good shape.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the one thing that Sean and I have talked about too is how to kind of establish, I guess, pacing or strategy in terms of how long something might take, but then also kind of a strategy of what is the most important aspect at a certain point, to kind of dictate, okay, well, something over here is kind of getting done, but something over to the left is what has to get done.
Right.
I think that's what kind of the next iteration. Kind of we're trying a couple of things with getting people to take more leadership in sort of their area to do a little bit of self-organization, and then kind of also a little bit of from the top, what's the priority on a business level. That if whatever you're working on might be important, but if something else isn't getting done, how do we address that as a priority?
It's a little tricky. The thing that worked really well for us at Engine Yard early on, and we didn't really have a system per se, and it got pretty screwed up. Kind of the more controls we tried to put in place, the worse it worked.
Yeah.
But what it really was is we were always doing everything that needed to be done. Like there were, of course there's always fires burning, but the organization as a whole is always working on one thing at a time. Like, we got amazing shit done organizationally that way, and no date set. It's like everybody knew we were in a hurry because we were working 24/7, and so was everybody else, and anybody that wasn't was kind of not welcome. And so it wasn't a matter of setting dates. Everybody was getting everything done as fast as is humanly possible, and we knew that because we could see them bleeding out the eyes and ears from the effort they were putting in. But as soon as we tried to start, once we got VC resources, we're like, well, now we can do more things at once and move faster. And like, it's almost true to say nothing ever got done from that point on. Like, it's like one thing at a time is pretty cool. Like, if as a company, if you can get 6, 8, not major, but substantial, important pieces of functionality out a year, that's huge.
No, definitely. I think
so you don't need to have 4 teams working on different things. Like, it's like, here, we're doing this now, and we would go through cleanup cycles too. It's like, okay, look, we just did a whole bunch of new shit. Some of it's pretty janky. We're just going to take 3 weeks here. And nobody has any deliverables other than to get ready for the next set of deliverables, because anything you don't like about what's going on, this is the time to fix it.
Yeah.
Right? What Apple did in their OSs for a long time is they did TikTok. They came out with Leopard was a big release, and then Snow Leopard was making everything work right. Right? Yeah. And then so there were these TikTok and Intels on the whole TikTok plan too. Get features out the door and then clean up after the features are out the door.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think we're even with a Google Drive or whatever, right? It gets sort of fragmented, and then kind of going back and trimming off the stuff that got put in the wrong place, and so to speak, and then moving on to the recreate the next mess, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, put that mess away, sweep it up and everything, because there's definitely a big problem with the concept of technical debt, and it extends out beyond code. I mean, you can have it in systems and processes in the company and everything. You know what? Everybody hates this particular piece of backwoods crap we have going on over here. It's time to fix that thing. Right, and it's not uncommon that might touch every part of the company, and every part of the company should be aware of it, because. And then what happened, what really started happening is when we had multiple teams running, it became extremely difficult to synchronize everybody's idea about what was happening and when it might be done and what the importance levels were. And what starts happening is the teams start getting competitive. And then they start working against each other rather than with each other, whereas it's if everybody's okay, the next thing that we're going to release is this. Everybody get ready for it. Finance, you get ready for it. You figure out the accounting, legal, insurance, blah, blah, blah. You do all that. Snugs, bang that technology out, get it looking good. It's got to be right for the release, right?
That's the
marketing, everybody.
Yeah. Well, that's the one on the marketing side, I guess, is, if you do anything kind of more on a press outlet basis, obviously you don't want to disappoint them. In terms of the date, right? I'm thinking more, when we're talking.
No, but let me give you another view of that. Okay, let me ask you what's worse. So say you really, 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 really need to get something out on a particular date. Okay, because of a press event or something, there's a big trade show that something must be ready for.
Yep.
What would you rather have happen? Would you rather miss that event, or would you rather wreck the company trying to make it? Now, I mean, obviously you want to make the event with great product, right?
Yep.
But what you don't here's the thing. When you try, I understand the need to have stuff ready to go at launch and at marketing time. But what if marketing's continuous? Like, what if marketing is building the program and figuring out the strategy while the thing comes together, and then when it comes together, they're ready to go?
No, I mean I definitely agree with that. We we have a small initiative coming up where initially there was a little bit more of I guess a eagerness on that end, to get someone in or do it live, and I was like, you guys have 3 or 4 ideas going on, let's trim it down. But then it's also right, like, well, this first one is an experiment that is going to say, if it works, that's push the button to make it go again and see if something similar can work. If it didn't work, is it because of the implementation, the idea, or how we went about it, right?
Right.
I think I think there's that, then I guess it's sort of on the longer term stuff where it's more probably, what are you, right? Like if you're going, on a trip, what do you leave behind? What do you take? And what's the one thing not to forget, right? So I think with that, it's more like, okay, well,
but have you ever, in these circumstances where everything must go perfectly, have you ever seen them go perfectly?
No,
Like,
I guess so. There's the idea of like, okay, well, you could go for 7 different features, or you could just go for the 2. And if you go for the 2, you'll probably be done more than enough time, or you're thinking you'll get the 7 in, and then.
But think about it. But think about it this way. I think it's actually more exciting for the market and for your customers if you have a little event on each one.
Yeah.
Like, so you don't need 7 features. You need the next one.
Yeah.
You can have a list of 7, what you think right now the next 7 are going to be, always subject to change. But there's only the next thing. Like, you shouldn't be planning a big press release around 7 new things. Like, it ain't going to happen. Exactly,
yeah.
Like, much, much, much better to make a little bit of noise each one. And then, and if you're going to make a big amount of noise, by all means, make it after the thing is done.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? I mean, like, it's better to let the world know a little after you're done than to let the world know and have it not be done.
Exactly.
Like, what Zuckerberg said was, you got to be cool. Right? I mean, like, you can't, like, it's totally uncool to underperform.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, it's a tricky situation, and the more people you get involved, like what I noticed at Engine Yard is the harder and harder as we got bigger, the harder we tried to control stuff, the less control we had of it.
Well, what's interesting though too is you look at Apple, right? You look at Siri when it first came out, right? It was awful, right? It was truly awful. Or Apple Maps.
Well, and that was Apple Maps. I think was post Jobs era.
Yeah.
Like, that dude never released anything. Like, they delayed the iPhone for like 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Like, they had an iPhone like 3.5 years before we got the one we all fell in love with.
Yeah, and that's an interesting kind of debate of the patience on, say, the iPhone, or kind of Siri in part was probably released too early because they wanted to get more data to make it better.
Right. I liked what I liked is, I think one of the best strategies they ever had, and would have been very, very wise to do on the watch, was they just said, yeah, it's kind of a hobby. Like, we think there's a space here. We don't think the tech's really ready, in the large scale, but we want to be a part of this. They did it with the Apple TV.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, we're doing this little thing. It's kind of cool. check it out. You can buy one if you want. We don't really care,
Yeah.
you know. And now they're selling a lot of them.
Yeah, where you kind of look at the Google Glass, they marketed that so heavily before it got released. I think you'd hear about it 3 or 4 years before, and now no one uses it, right?
Right. Yeah, and the key term that I learned from Disney is under promise, over deliver.
Yeah.
Right.
Disney's probably one of the best at marketing.
Right. The signs at Disneyland are very, very, very carefully managed, not to be accurate, but to show twice as long as they expect it to take. So when you're in line and it says 20 minutes, they're almost certain you're going to be there in 10. And that's exactly the way they want it. Because then it's like, oh, God, that was so much better in 20 minutes.
I guess it's like when you're eating at a restaurant that doesn't take reservations, right? When it's ever, okay, it's 45 minutes, we'll just get one drink at the bar, and then, pick a new place, and then, 10 minutes later, the hostess comes by and is like, well, your table's ready. You're like, oh, great.
Right, exactly. Right, because everybody's pissed if they're 3 minutes late, but if they're 10 minutes early, that's way better, right? So that's the thing. Like, right? You got to get stuff out, and you got to try it, and you want to get it out to groups of people, but you can let it out to your customers before you make a lot of noise out of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that big a deal, and there's no secret. I mean, the idea of like this big, that you're gonna be Steve Jobs releasing the Macintosh and springing it on the world. I mean, that's not how it worked with the Apple II. Like,
yeah.
Once you have $1 billion and you don't really give a fuck, how much it costs, or you're not hanging on for dear life. Well, then you can go in for the big goddamn events if you feel the need to do so. But when you're little, man, you just got to remain scrappy. And the whole like synchronized launch thing, I'm telling you, man, it completely demoralizes and wrecks companies. Because then it's all like, well, whose fault was it? Engineering wasn't on time, or marketing screwed up the launch, and blah 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 blah. It's like everybody's got to be in that shit together.
Yeah.
Like there are, because otherwise you have like this external enemy that's the deadline.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, you build it as fast as you fucking can. That's the goal, right? Not to have it done by a certain date. Like, build it as fast as possible.
Yeah, I think it's not done by a certain date. I think it's more of the well, Snug says empathy, but the empathy and realization of where is there anything that you could help with, if sort of the one thing that the company is going to shoot for this day or this week is getting done, or you could in a sense help get that ball moving that way, less so than in 4 months my little section is going to be amazing, and if that other person's isn't done, then it's their fault, not mine,
right? It is, and it's kind of interesting. Like, I've been working in Go a little bit, which we've talked about, and I'm working on this and released open source a quad tile library, which is a fairly specific thing, which I won't bother you with the details of. But one of the Go's things is it has asynchronous execution semantics and whatnot. And what's pretty fascinating about it, and I found the same thing in Perl in Ruby with its libraries like Celluloid, that there's massive overhead to asynchronous activities.
Yeah, generally it's slower for a lot of things. Anything CPU bound, right?
Well, so what depends is how. Here's the key thing. There's a lot of overhead to run something asynchronously. So if you have a few things that need to be done, each of which are heavy CPU, then it works great, right?
Yeah.
And there's other things where it can work really great as well. But if you just want the thing to go fast, it's really hard to beat just a single core just ripping.
Yeah.
right? Like, because then there's no synchronization overhead or communication overhead or any of that shit. And that's how I felt Engine Yard was at the beginning when we were doing our best. There was no communication overhead in the company because everybody, like, communication's really great when there's no need to communicate. And that sounds wrong, but I mean, like, when everybody's working together on a goal, you don't need fucking meetings. Like, everybody's talking constantly, and it's not competitive, and it's not nasty, and it's not, well, we need to get together on this. Everybody is together on it.
Yeah.
Like, we're all working together to get this thing done, right? Everybody's pitching in wherever the fuck is necessary to get that ball kicked through. Like, that's when shit happens fast, when it's just flowing, you know. And
yeah, that's when I've even on a, like, say, a coding level, you know, kind of doing things on more of a micro, you know, functionality structure. It's kind of, you know, the best thing is that everybody touches, you know, something someone else is working on, even if it's not their, you know, forte, because it's the moment, you know, people even start to touch someone else's repo is the moment, right, where it's
okay, I'll be in a few minutes. What's that?
It's the moment it starts to become more real, or it's like, well, you know, did you know? And when you're, you know, setting it up, there's an issue. You know, when someone does it from a new machine that hasn't, you know, been using it day to day, it ends up being, you know, an improvement usually. Than if you kind of, you know, everyone's more siloed out, right?
Not quite following you.
Basically, no, we have a lot of. We're not doing the monolithic apps, you know, on the development side. But one thing
right.
is that, you know, whether it's you know, Ruby or JavaScript or Python, you know, if someone else from not knowing, say, that language jumps into the repo and you know, does a pull request or says, you know, they had an issue installing it, you know, it makes it much more real for the person who's sort of the core contributor in a good way of, oh, someone's actually, you know, utilizing my thing, and I didn't know I had an issue with the setup or that there was a bug in, you know, one specific aspect.
Right.
You know, getting in a sense collaboration, even where, you know, people feel uncomfortable, is generally a, you know, a win in a sense. You got Snugs committed a couple bits of Python code the other week.
What'd you say, Philip?
Said you beat Katie to the punch the other week, right? On the HTTP stuff.
The what?
The pull request for the change in the HTTP to not set in encoding over.
Oh yeah. Because it feels good when you wake up in the morning and you got some work to do and somebody else did it for you.
No, she's got a rebase issue, right?
Oh well. Should have done it faster.
Sounds like a personal problem.
That's what I always said when we first started using version control back in the 90s at this company. I remember it was like I totally saw everything as a race. Everybody's like, God damn it, like, you know, you keep merging code, and I have to keep, you know, dealing with the merge problems. I'm like, well, merge your code. You know, like sorry that I'm, you know, fixing bugs and shit all over the code base, and you're moving really glacially slow. Like, you know, they're basically asking me to slow down so that their, you know, slow pace isn't as, you know, distracting, or you know, they don't get distracted from their incredibly slow pace. And we didn't have good tools like Git at the time, so it was even, you know, more of an issue than it is today. Cool. Well, anything I can help with, guys?
Dogs, what do you?
Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Did you have any?
Go ahead, Philip.
Did you have anything on the sort of more business aspect that you wanted to ask, or?
Well, I guess from the business aspect, what I'd like to do, Tom, if you can, Lance and I had actually talked a little bit about, about sensible investing with Scott and such. Scott says hello too, by the way. But I wanted to get in contact with Lance and maybe go over practicing a pitch on him to see if because he definitely has the know-how as far as with the stock and also or with investments, and also would like to go over our slide deck with you, Tom, if you have some time in the future.
Sure. Yeah, do you have Lance's contact info? I mean, he'd be happy
I
to
don't.
talk.
I don't.
And okay.
Yeah, maybe you can throw us a warm email.
I don't know. Lance doesn't have a whole bunch of pitching experience. What? I don't even know how. What Lance has, you kind of can't teach. It's boundless off.
What was that?
Super down direct and totally unafraid of everything.
I think Tom said boundless optimism.
Like he didn't pitch Mark Cuban. He sent him an email and said, "Hey, we got something cool happening," and like 15 minutes later, they had cut a deal.
Nice.
Involved. And it was all over email at midnight on a Saturday. It's just bizarre. Like, how often does that happen? But yeah, I'd be happy to put him in touch. I mean, he's super smart and would always be, interested in helping anybody that he could. So, and I'd be happy to look over your deck.
Awesome. Yeah, we're pretty much, done besides one or two little tweaks, so we can send that your way to get some feedback on it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Awesome. That's great. How's that sound for the next thing in business?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
You bet.
Actually, Philip, do you have all your questions answered? Then, Tom, you're clear on what we got you on the line for?
I think. Well, no, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't want to get too much into the tech stuff. I'll let Snugs and Katie deal with that.
Yeah, we'll deal with that.
Cool.
Okay, great. We're clear.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good night.